Hello, listeners. You are tuned into Both Sides of the Aisle. This is Shireen Ghorbani. I usually represent the left, but today we're just having a conversation with one of my local political heroes and friend, Councilmember Jim Bradley, who is just finishing, I would say, a rather distinguished and long run on the Salt Lake County Council. Jim, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, it's always my pleasure, especially to share some time with you.
So, Jim, I think a lot of people, I often said one of the most interesting things about county government is that it is a place that has massive impact on people's lives, but it's sometimes the government that people often know the least about. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, I've suffered through that since the day I was elected, and that was a long time ago, where people aren't quite sure what your territory is. Even my own children, these are adult children, will come up to me and talk about Aaron Mendenhall, or
decisions at the city,
or some pothole they hit, and why am I not fixing it? I said, look, someday you'll learn that I'm with the county, not the city. So
we're going to go back before that. We're going to get to county government a little bit later, but I want to start at the beginning. Okay. So, Jim, where are you from? Tell us just a little bit about you.
Well, I'm a Salt Lake boy. I was adopted when I was 3 months old, but born here in the valley.
In the valley.
And actually, I was Bingham Canyon, I think, is where it started. But anyway.
Yeah.
And adopted by just a terrific, mom and dad. I mean, that's all I've been since 3 months old. And both of them are educators, so I grew up in that environment.
So let's talk about that shift. So you grew up in the valley, grew up in the south end of the Salt Lake Valley.
I grew up in the Mill Creek area.
In the Mill Creek area.
I moved into a house when I was in second grade.
Yes. And tell me about your path into politics. So what were some of the first places that, was your family very political, or was it something you took interest in?
No, they were political. And just, I don't want to run out of time here, but when we moved out to White Circle, a knock on the door about 6 months after we were in, and some of the people came and said, hey, we have an unspoken rule here that if you ever decide to sell, don't sell to blacks.
Oh, wow.
And so I learned when Dad told me what his response was, and he said, well, I told him I promised I would never sell to a black, but I'll give it to the first one that walks by.
Wow, good for him.
Okay, so that's the influencer. That's the atmosphere at home.
Yeah.
That type of thought.
Yeah.
And, of course, like I said, they were both educators, so they were bright and red and everything else. And just grew up. We had a lot of conversations at home. But what got me in politics and moving on was really the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
I graduated from high school in 1964, and I went immediately into the National Guard.
National Guard. Mm-hmm.
And 6 months of basic training. After that, I came back. And with both my parents being educators, the first thing I did was after the first or second semester of college, I flunked out. And, and so I had to go to night school.
Just to make them proud?
Yeah, right. I mean, the war was going on. I was active in terms of anti-war efforts, and the music in the late 60s and 70s was terrific, and et cetera, et cetera. So,
yes, anyway. Of course. So you got active around war.
Yeah.
And then did you start with campaign work? Did you where'd you get going?
Well, interesting enough, the first thing I ever did politically was run for delegate in my precinct.
Yeah.
And I was suiting up for Gene McCarthy.
Oh, wow.
1968.
Yeah.
And I went to the public our mass meeting.
Yeah.
And invited friends to come and vote for him and everything else. And there was a ton of people who were there. And when it was all said and done, I ran for delegate and lost to a person named Al Santee. And I said, oh, God, he didn't even say anything. What's he stand for? Well, he had brought more people than I had.
Yeah.
That same year, there was liquor by the drink on the ballot, and he owned a bar.
Okay.
And he thought that would be a good thing to do. So anyway, I learned a lesson, though. Never take an election for granted.
No, and you typically don't. That's true. That's very true of you. Okay, so delegate, then what happened?
Well, then got involved in that and said, God, politics is fun. And then volunteered for Senator Moss's reelection in 1970. Yeah. And there was a wonderful woman named Bev White who served in the legislature who took me under her arm. She was a legislator representing the Tooele area, and introduced me, showed me what to do and everything else. And so I really gave her a lot of credit for kind of teaching me a lot, because as a raw person, you go in and the first time you have to public speak in behalf of a sitting senator, boy, I was just terrible. I mean, I said, oh boy, I got to practice this.
Yeah.
I did. After Moss, in 1972, Wayne Owens decided to run for Congress, and he was going to walk the state some 500 and some odd miles, or maybe it was 700, I can't remember now. He called me and said, would you consider running my campaign while I'm doing this, and basically front the walk? And I had a job at that time, not a great one, but I was bringing home money.
Yeah.
I was also got married.
Okay.
And so I go home and tell my wife, well, I'm quitting my job and I'm going on this long walk with Wayne Owens. He's going to pay me. I'm not sure how much, but and anyway, so that was a year-long endeavor, and we won.
Yeah.
And from there I went.
Well, campaigns, I mean, certainly that must have been such a wild time. I feel like we are so divorced from a time when a candidate who wanted to represent this state or a congressional district would actually walk one end to the other.
Yeah.
I think it's such an incredible piece of Utah history.
And he did it. He didn't cheat either.
Yeah.
I keep saying, hey, sure you don't want to ride to the next town or something? No. He walked it.
That's incredible. Okay, so give us the turn from supporting campaigns. So that was Owens, and then what was the next?
Well, after that, I went to work and took work a little more seriously than I had in the past.
Yeah.
So I did that for a while, and then in 1988, I guess, somebody came and said, would you consider running for the county commission?
Commission at the time.
And I thought about it, and I said, well, I've been involved in politics. I know a little about it. And I said, sure. I ran there were 3 Republicans on the commission, Mike Stewart, Bart Barker, and Shimizu.
And at the time, were those partisan? Or
oh, yeah.
They were partisan.
Yeah,
okay.
they were partisan.
Got it.
And so I ran against Mike Stewart, and it looked like I had won the evening. It was that close, but it ended up I lost by a hair.
I know a little bit about that.
Yeah. Okay. And but it gave me enough excitement for the process and everything else, saying, God, I can really do this.
Yes.
And so I came back, ran against Bart Barker, and won. Yeah. And Randy Horiuchi won that year, too, and he beat Shimizu, and he won as well.
So this was when Salt Lake County, and this is, so listeners are across the state. So there are many people who are hearing this that have a similar form of government. So you've got a county commission. We had a county commission here in Salt Lake County. This ultimately did turn into a county council, which I had the honor of serving on with you.
Right.
And when we come back, I'd love to talk a little bit more about the experience that you've had in office at the county level, and then what you think some of the biggest challenges are for the county, for Utah, kind of going forward. But you're listening to Both Sides of the Aisle, and my name is Shireen Ghorbani, joined by Councilmember Jim Bradley, and we'll be right back. You're listening to Both Sides of the Aisle on Utah Public Radio. We love to hear from listeners like you. If you would like to send us a comment, email bsotapodcast@gmail.com. That's bsotapodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Both Sides of the Aisle. This is Shireen Ghorbani. Again, grateful to have you with us, listeners. I'm so excited to be with my friend and former colleague, Councilmember Jim Bradley, who's been on the county council for, since I guess that was 1990. I was on just for 2 of those years with you, but I would love for you, Jim, to talk a little bit about, so you first ran in 1988, you said you ran again and got on the council in 1990. At the time, it was a commission. What were some of the biggest challenges when you first entered that seat? So you're first on the county commission. Do you remember some of the big things that happened in those first years?
Yeah, and let me just, I may have given you some misinformation. Elected to the commission in 1990.
1990, yes.
And 2000, when we formed the council, and then it became the council.
Yeah.
But as the commission, I was there for 4 years and chairman all 4 years. And Randy Horiuchi also was on the commission with me. And so we had a 2-to-1 Democratic majority. And the interesting thing about the commission, you are the legislature, the judicial, and you also are the administrators. We all had portfolios. I ran community services and a few other things. Randy had public works. And with that setup, you only needed 2 more votes to do anything you wanted. 2 votes, you could do anything you wanted.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that can be heady, but it also can be very efficient if you're heading in the right direction.
That's right.
And I do take pride in saying, okay, that's a responsibility because it is a very powerful position. And we had the second biggest budget in the state next to the state. I don't know what it was back then.
Yeah, but that's still true today.
Yeah.
So Salt Lake County's budget, I think the budget that just passed was $2 billion.
Yeah.
The state, I think, is something like 31.
Right. Yeah, it's much bigger.
But to give a sense of that, that is the second largest budget in the state. So when you're thinking about population, you're thinking about needs. And this is a really different time, too, because in the 90s, there was a lot more unincorporated Salt Lake County. So the shared services across that county were much more pronounced, or just a much bigger part of that budget. But anyway, go on. So what were some of the big challenges that were happening in those first years?
Well, first of all, we were tearing down the Salt Palace, or, we're not really. They had talked about it, and everybody decided to do it, and then I came in and did it.
Yeah.
I hired the wrecking ball, and it went down. And then we started the rebuild process for the new convention center, and that was really a lot of fun. Now, I didn't do any of this alone. Right. I had a great staff. Kevin Higgins was my chief of staff, and you couldn't find a better and more intelligent person. And then I had other people, like head of community services and other and they were all just absolutely terrific. In fact, they knew more than me, which is exactly
how it should be.
Yeah, my success is because they were smarter than me.
Yeah.
And so with that foundation, we could really go forward and do a lot of things very quickly. Not only could we look at things like the convention center and how that impacted the whole county and what we do, but also I got involved in environmental issues that, particularly beginning with the foothills. People were still climbing up into the foothills, and they were all unincorporated county, even the ones above the city.
Yep.
And so I passed, or got the colleagues to pass an ordinance, our foothill ordinance, saying you can only go this high on this type of slope, and had a lot of restrictions to put a stop to. Developers would have climbed to the top.
Yeah.
They really would have.
Yep.
And our mountains are so majestic and beautiful, they need protection.
That's right.
And that's true of the canyons as well. So I did things like wetlands in Alda, for instance, saved some wetlands from some construction that was proposed. So anyway, I started taking the environment real serious, and the county's role as county-wide. We do have a role there.
Yeah.
And sort of started exerting that as well.
Well, and those are challenges that continue to this day, right? I think about the mining, the efforts to do the gravel pits up in the canyons, the challenges around protecting, we're going to talk a little bit later about just some of the big challenges on the horizon, but decisions that were made 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago around preserving wetlands or keeping large areas open for water retention or public parks, and utilizing that in really smart ways to protect the environment here long term are critical decisions. And as other counties are growing, I hope that when people are going to vote for their representation at the county level across the state, that they're really thinking, is this a person who cares deeply about and is willing to get into the weeds, I guess, into the wetlands, on understanding the impact that county decisions can have on long-term sustainability or the livability of our state. So environmental issues became big to you. What were some of the other big things that you were wrestling with in those earlier?
Arts and culture.
Yep.
We had they've always struggled, whether it be the symphony, the ballet, or RDT.
Yeah.
Rory Woodbury.
All of them.
The beginning of the opera.
Yes.
On and on and on. And back to my mother again, because I grew up in the right environment, so I appreciated the arts very, very much. With that, and being over the community services, which includes our cultural assets in the county, and the county is the one that has the cultural assets and the stages and everything else.
Yeah. So we're talking the Eccles Theater downtown. We're
Capitol
talking
Theater.
Capitol Theater, Abravanel Hall.
Right.
So many of these facilities, and then we're also seeing more in the Valley, which I think is really exciting. The Hill Center Theater is supported in part by the county, right? These other really important institutions that I think I was a theater kid. So I do believe that arts, whether it's music, literature, theater, certainly, help us to imagine a world help us to experience a world that's beyond anything we could ever experience. I think it shapes our intellect, our empathy. So I think these are really important institutions, and they don't get funded, right?
And they're part of our culture too. The Mormon Church has been very, very good in terms of, from day one when they moved into the Valley, accenting the arts as something that they valued.
Yeah.
And that is carried on traditionally. And so, that's been a terrific asset that we have a population that understands how important it really is.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so arts and culture is big for you. I know that's exciting. Will you really quickly tell the story of how Abravanel Hall got its name?
Oh, yeah, I'll be as quick as I can, but that's one of my favorite things. It was called Symphony Hall prior to, while I was on the commission, it was Symphony Hall. Remember that I was chairman and only needed one more vote to do anything I wanted. So I actually had another good idea that I stole from other people. Two wonderful gentlemen came to me, one Tony Rampton and the other the architect who designed the hall. And they came to me and said, we have a good idea. It's Bravanel's 90th birthday in a week. Why don't we rename the thing? I said, God, that's a great idea. We're doing it. So I called Randy, and Randy, as a great colleague on the commission, I said, here's what I want to do. Do I have your vote? He says, I'm in. And when Randy ever said, I'm in, you could take it to the bank. So anyway, word got out. I went and saw Maurice, too, and I said, we're doing this. And he was... that was a very sensitive moment because he was flattered but also embarrassed that we would endow him with that respect.
Yeah.
And I said, no, we're doing it. First thing he said is, no, don't do that. And I said, no, we're doing it. So, show up to your birthday party. So anyway, wonderful gentleman. Without him, we wouldn't have anything in this valley. I mean, everything that really means something. Well, I've mentioned them all before in terms of culture. Yeah. He had his hand in it. Yeah. And set the example with the symphony. And what he did is conducting for as many 40 years or more or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, so long story short, I went forward and did it. I got a lot of pushback from people who wanted to sell the naming rights to somebody with a big check. Yep. I said no. Yeah. And I said, this man deserves it. He's not going to buy it. He deserves it because he's spent his life doing this.
As an artist.
And so we're going to do it. So I want you all to come and, with gladness and heart, enjoy the event. And moved on.
Yes.
Conversation over.
And there it stands today.
And
it sounds as though it will be protected going forward.
Oh, yeah, I think it is. Now, that was a little battle because with the advent of our new entertainment district in Salt Lake, it seemed to be in the way of this party street they were planning, or whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, that's not fair, but maybe it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm into a party street, but go on.
and the county owns the building. We own the land. Yeah. And I got the council to say no. Yeah. And I had a good colleague on the Republican side on the council who was just as adamant as I was, so it worked very well. And the council passed a resolution saying, no, we're going to leave it as it is, the way it is, because symphonically it's one of the top 3 or 4 in the nation in terms of the acoustics and delivering of good music and everything else.
It's a real gem in our downtown, and I'm so grateful that that the plan is to protect it going forward for many reasons, many personal, wonderful memories there, and also just such a beautiful space. So let's transition a little bit to tell me. So in now, we're talking about multiple decades of service to this county. What's changed? What feels different than when you started? I mean, obviously the commission to the council is a change. It went from a 3-person commission where you mentioned it was pretty easy to get things done. You just need one more vote, to a council, which is 9 people. So there are 3 that serve countywide. You've served in that countywide role. I did briefly as well. And then there are regional people as well. So you've got I kind of think about it sort of like 2 South Valley, kind of 2 middle, and 2 kind of representing the North End. What has changed in the years that you've served? What have you noticed?
Well, first of all, those who make the decision in the county, you have to have a perspective on what the needs are. On the commission, it was a full-time job. You were responsible for the whole valley, not just a section of it. And you were deeply familiar with certain portfolios. Like I said, I was over community services, parks and recreation, and our cultural stuff. And Randy had public works, but we all got to know what these people do.
Yeah.
More so than the council people do.
Yeah.
And so you're really part of the effort, and you have a better understanding of what their needs are and what they don't need maybe as well. But anyway, so that was very useful, but also it's a lot of power in 2 people out of a 3-member
commission. Yeah.
When you have that type of power, it can be abusive if you want to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I was lucky that even though there were people who would come to me and say, "Well, how about I'll support your campaign if you do this zoning thing." I said, "No, that's and I never. You always had to be wary, but developers never bothered me. I fully understood that was their job to ask for the world.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
And my job was to say no when appropriate. And so it worked out. We have mutual respect with a lot of them. So.
Yeah. So tell me what you think are some of the other changes or challenges. Would you say that there's a difference in the way that you've seen county and state government interacting, or county? I mean, certainly I think about some of the big changes that happen with unified police, for example, a lot of fracturing in Salt Lake County, where cities decided they all needed their own police force, and ultimately I think created a bigger tax burden for individuals. But so tell me some of the other changes in the broader dynamic.
During my career, and it has been almost generational.
Yeah.
I'm kind of embarrassed about how long I've been in there, but I'm so glad I was.
Yeah.
I mean, because I felt I did a very good job.
You did a good job.
Anyway. What has happened is you've seen growth, of course. I mean, that happens. But you've seen also, at the time I was a commissioner, we had a large unincorporated part of the county, very, very large. We provided municipal services we were the biggest municipal service provider when I was on the commission.
Yeah.
And then over time, people want their own city, their own mayor, their own chief of police, and for whatever reasons. And I can understand the emotional need for that, and I can also understand that certain areas of the county may feel that they weren't getting their fair share of what county tax dollars there were, and they could do better as a city. And so over my career. Up until now, Bob, because everything is incorporated now, but a little portion.
Pretty much, yeah.
County got out of municipal services. We didn't have any. That was a responsibility of cities, not and counties who had unincorporated services to offer.
Yeah.
But when we didn't have any more unincorporated county, we didn't need a municipal service. So,
so the issues change.
So that's changed. Planning and zoning, for instance, within the city itself is not the county's responsibility anymore, and within the cities. And that's been, that's good in the sense that people can have some emotional attachment to their city.
Yeah.
And that's important for people to feel this is theirs.
Okay.
And with mayors, they're mayors. They want their own chief of police and this and that. And then, of course, they want a government building. And so people pay more for a city. They end up. I mean, you're paying for an administration that the county has and the cities have now.
Yeah.
So I've seen over the 24 odd years on the council that we have moved fairly quickly and effectively as looking at ourselves as regional providers. What do we provide to everyone in the county, irrespective if you're in a city or what city you're in or unincorporated county?
Yeah.
And we do that with our art facilities. We're building those, moving southward. We own and operate them, but and parks and recreation, regional parks. They're
big investments.
And a big investment. Cities can't afford what what we do with the Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
But that's and the recreational centers themselves, which are spread out through the valley. And so there's a lot of areas where we've taken the responsibility, as we should, as regional providers.
Right.
And one of those was we tried to get together in terms of police services, the Unified Police, and that worked very, very well. But
For a while.
For a while.
Yeah.
And then not to blame cities, but cities did say, or in particular mayors, we should have our own police force. That's what cities do.
Yeah.
And but it's going to cost you more.
Well,
right.
let me
Go
wrap
ahead.
it up by asking
Go ahead.
this. So as we think about the future, what do you think, just one issue, if you had to choose one, that you think is going to be the most challenging issue for Utah going forward, what is it?
Boy, there's a whole list.
I know.
But,
Give me your
the first
top
thing
one.
that comes to mind. First of all, I think it's extremely important that the council, even though it's a partisan council, that we run as Democrats, Republicans, or whatever, that we get rid of those boundaries. And we've been somewhat successful, and that makes government on our end a lot more efficient and less wasteful in terms of all the arguments you may have over ideology, which have nothing to do with county services.
Government. Yes, I agree.
Anyway, that we've got to continue to watch that.
Yeah.
Don't let that get in the way. Secondly, I think that we have to, because we are having more regional services, and I haven't figured out how to do this, but 6 of the 9 council people have districts.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to become like mayors saying, oh, this is my territory. And, so they have to assume.
Think together.
Council people have to understand they have a responsibility for the county as a whole, too, not just their district.
Yep. Last thing?
Yeah, so that's always a challenge, and then the real challenge is the state legislature, and how they can encroach on
local control.
Local control, whether it be a city in Salt Lake City, you can look at that, or whether it be the county, and you take the proposed mine up at Parley's and what's going to happen in there, and issues like that, and transportation up Little Cottonwood Canyon, whether it's a gondola or a road or expansion, things like that. So you have legislators who really they represent a small little district, and a lot of them represent parts of Salt Lake County, but they don't have any sense of what we're doing
At the county level.
At the county level.
I agree
They
with
really
that.
don't. And so I think they're always going to be problematic in terms of doing good things.
That's right. Okay. Well, Jim, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I really appreciate your service to the state and to our county. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness with which you've always approached the work. I would say you are a model for what you just described in terms of being a Democrat, being a lifelong Democrat. But really, when I was sitting at that county council table with you, what you were then and what I've always known you to be is a person who is more interested in solutions to address the problems that people are facing. And that really is beyond politics. So I'm grateful for you, grateful for your service, and thanks for sitting down with me today.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to do this, and those were very kind words.
Oh.
Thank you. They were.
No problem. Well, you've been listening to Both Sides of the Aisle. I'm Shireen Ghorbani. That was Councilmember Jim Bradley, and this program is produced by Anthony Scoma. Thanks so much.